Hello and welcome to Health Tech Builders. Here we explore the business of health innovation through real stories from leaders in the trenches, the wins, the failures, and everything in between. You will get insights and practical advice to help you build and lead in health tech. I am your host, Rodrigo Hute. Today, my guest is Dr. Jared Dashevsky. Jared is a physician and also the founder of the popular newsletter Healthcare Huddle. Jared, thank you so much for being here today and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to dive into this episode. Today we're gonna talk about the current state of AI in clinical medicine. But most importantly, we're going to be taking a physician's perspective on the evolution of AI and the different tools and agents and platforms that we are seeing in the marketplace today. So I would like to start, perhaps we can start broad and we can talk about a broad overview of AI in medicine, and then we're going to dive deep into some of the most important use cases for physicians. So I would like to start, Jared, by asking you that what happens when you strip away the hype and the marketing in AI? What's the real state of AI in clinical medicine today?
It's interesting. I think since ChatGPT came out 3 years ago, right? Like the whole hype around generative AI has just been like nonstop, right? Like every other month, like there's something new. But I think when like you strip everything away, the startups, the companies focused on AI that are truly making the best progress are the ones that are solving like boring problems. I think the companies out there that are spending so much in marketing to hype up their own AI solutions, they're like solving problems that aren't really bugging physicians. And I think a lot of the problems that physicians want to address are like some of the most boring problems that you will find in healthcare. So I've been using, we'll get into it, but I've been using a bunch of platforms that are just helping me address like the boring stuff that really makes me angry. And if you can tell, I'm smiling a little bit. I just came off of a weekend of work, but I was using these AI platforms and it was helping me, and I feel refreshed.
Would you say the best platforms and the best solutions are coming from incumbents that are getting into AI, or are these emerging growth stage companies that are truly creating innovative products, or both, or perhaps both?
So you bring up a very interesting question, and I think it's also a very hot topic because you have all these fast-growing startups that from their inception point, they were like, we are an artificial intelligence company solving problem XYZ in healthcare, right? Like that was their mission from the get-go. But then you have these incumbents who did not start as AI companies, right? Epic did not start as an AI company. They started as a financial tool, right, for keeping track of billing. But Epic obviously has all the capital in the world to just dip their feet into AI and become competitive with the fast-growing startups. So I think it's the fast-growing startups that are showing us how to solve these problems with AI. The incumbents, on the other hand, they can just like take what these startups are doing and just like hire a team and get it done worlds quicker. And they also have the distribution to get their solution out there that these startups don't have. Epic, for example, they dominate the market share when it comes to electronic health records. So they just launched, or they are launching their generative AI feature, which is what like Doximity is doing as a third-party platform. And Epic's in my workflow. So like, what's stopping me from just using Epic and not these other third-party platforms? But I think it's a very hot topic, and it could be debated.
And what surprised you the most about how quickly or slowly adoption has happened for physicians?
Yeah, so actually in this my past newsletter on Sunday, It's almost like the 3-year anniversary from when I first wrote about AI, generative AI in healthcare, right? Because ChatGPT launched 3 years ago, and so three
That's
years ago
right.
I took time to predict what are the key implications of generative AI in healthcare. Like, where is it going to have the biggest impact? And so I spent time this weekend while at work thinking about the progress that's been made and like, are we doing everything I predicted would happen when it comes to generative AI in healthcare? And the truth is, like, we've come a long way, and things are moving very quickly, right? Like the ambient documentation, summarizing patients' charts, research diagnostics, medical search platforms, like these things are all up and running, and they're improving every single day. So I, on the one hand, I'm surprised with like how fast everything is moving. But on the other hand, I'm not, because these AI tools are just so powerful and can be iterated on so quickly that I don't even know what's going to happen by the time I'm finished my fellowship training, right? So that's like 3 years from now. Like, what tools are going to be there? Because when I started residency, the open evidence was probably the first AI tool that was really taking off. Now there's dozens, if not hundreds, of tools that physicians are using.
So let's spend some time talking about why some tools win and others die. And you've said this before. I've been reading your newsletter for a couple of years now. Highly recommended to everyone who is listening and watching. You should check it out, definitely. But I know that you've said that clinicians, especially clinicians, adopt tools that make the day feel lighter, and not necessarily the ones that promise like an economic ROI. So I wanted to ask you, like, can you expand on that a little bit more? Like, what do you mean by that? And also, what do AI companies sometimes misunderstand about clinician psychology and incentives?
For sure. So I think the assumption that everyone has is that, like, if a physician likes it, like, they'll buy it. But in today's day and age in U.S. healthcare, a majority of physicians are employed by someone else, right? So like, they're working for an academic institution, they're working for a health network, they're under like a private equity owned hospital. Physicians are not the ones making the decision at the end of the day, right? So why would a physician who's salaried really care about the return on investment of a certain AI solution? What I really want is a tool that is just going to make my day easier, right? A tool that's going to allow me to spend less time staring at Epic than staring at a patient who's right next to me. Um, a tool that's going to help me, better understand a very complex patient who I'm seeing for the first time in the hospital or in the outpatient setting. A tool that's going to catch errors in the background to improve patient care. There's really no direct like return on investment from this, right? You can't measure like what is good care, right? We're trying to figure out how to measure it, but you can't directly measure it. So as the physician, like, I just want a tool that does that. I don't care if it's going to cost money, make money, right? The health system does, the private equity firms do, so they'll probably be more analytical and more critical. But like you said, like, I just want the day to be lighter. This weekend, I was using tools to help me better understand truly the most complex patients I've come across in New York City, and it allowed me to take better care of the patient. I spent less time in the chart. I could easily understand what's going on, what their past medical history was, complications, and I saw the patient in a shorter time than I would without these tools. And sorry, repeat the second question.
So it's no, the second one. It's about understanding clinician psychology and incentives.
Yeah,
But you
right.
already touched on that. So on the one hand, it's just to recap from what you just said, is physicians do not necessarily are making purchasing decisions. At least the vast majority of them, because they are employed by somebody else, and there is a difference between time versus money as a motivating factor. Would that be
Exactly.
accurate?
Yep,
Yeah.
that's accurate. And then to talk about the minority of physicians who do make decisions, right? Then you get into like uh, a more nuanced dilemma, right? It's like, do you adopt this technology that will make our day to day easier as physicians? It will allow us to, I don't know, build more rapport with the patient, take better care of them. But for the group, for the physician group, is this making us money? Is this tool making us money? And honestly, I don't think these tools like the ambient scribes, et cetera, will. Just through just through like listening to physician patient conversations and just creating a note. Where the real money will come from is like maybe like not missing diagnostic codes and ensuring that everything that you discuss, every lab you order is sent. The claims are sent to the insurance company, and you like increase reimbursement and reduce the missed opportunities. That's like what I foresee these ambient AI companies like going into, is like the billing or the revenue cycle management part of it, while having like a front facing physician tool to like improve their day or lighten the load.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it has to do. It helps with accuracy and to gather the right information, and at the same time, it helps improve time in front of the patient, and also reduce burnout at the same time, because they're spending less time doing the how do you call it, kind of the time consuming part of being a physician, right?
Exactly. And the current state of things, right? It's like when I sign a note, and I add like the diagnostic codes, whatever, there's a whole department for these, like hospitals have these whole departments that will review the physician's notes and make sure like whatever was mentioned is properly coded, that they didn't miss anything. So there's like a human labor component right now to ensuring accuracy, diagnostic accuracy. Um, but these AI tools, right, they could do that instead of like human labor. And that's like a direct cost savings, right? If you don't need a whole department reviewing notes to ensuring diagnostic codes are set, the AI could just do it.
Yeah, and that's a direct cost efficiency, operational efficiency for the institution, not necessarily for the
Exactly.
physician, but for the institution. Yeah,
Exactly.
that
And that scales over time, right? If you are a large health system in like a rural area and you have 10, 11, 12 hospitals and these tools are there throughout, right? You scale that could be a lot of cost savings.
that's right. So you've also talked you talk a lot about AI agents, AI copilots. Some people use those terms interchangeably. Um, what term do you prefer, and what's the kind of core difference between the two, or which one is the one that you tend to use the most?
Yeah, so this is a relatively recent revelation or like a hot topic that I think I'm like perpetuating. So that you have the agent and you have a co-pilot. When you think of like a co-pilot, right? Like American Airlines, United, like the co-pilot, like there's two human pilots there, and they're both responsible for for getting that plane into the air and landing it. And if anything happens, they're responsible for it at the end of the day. Uh, right now, though, like medical co-pilots or whatever you call it, they're not responsible for the decisions I end up making, right? So like the responsibility, like the legal responsibility at the end of the day doesn't isn't attributed to my co-pilot. It's attributed to me, even though I was using the co-pilot and they like gave me diagnostic frameworks to use, etc. Versus an agent, who I envision as like a really, really robust secretary, right? Who I
Mhm.
ask it to do anything and it will get it done. I ask it to do like a literature review for a medical question I'm interested in. It will go to the library and it'll get it done, right? A co-pilot uh, will do this, but the secretary is not responsible for the decision I make as a physician. So I think agent is better nomenclature for the current technology that's out there right now. I brought this up in my Healthcare Huddle community, and someone made a good point that they agree with what I'm saying, the co-pilot and the responsibility versus agent acting more like a really robust secretary. And they said the co-pilot, that nomenclature, that's like the end goal, the vision, right? Is where you do have this co-pilot who ends up being responsible for medical decisions. It has some sort of autonomy, and it could be held responsible. I'm not sure how close in the future that will be, but I kind of like that rebuttal that the co-pilot nomenclature, like that's the goal. That's where we want to get to.
All right, so let's move on and let's discuss some of the highest yield use cases for AI in healthcare. And we have at least 3 or 4 that you and I have discussed, Jared. So let's go one by one. The
Sure.
first use case that you mentioned, it's medical search and information retrieval. So what can you tell us? Talk a little bit about that, and why would you say that's use case number 1?
Yeah. So this is the medical search, the retrieval. It's used every day by physicians now. And again, ChatGPT, the generative AI stuff, only became popular 3 years ago. And now there's multiple tools being used that do this, that physicians are using every day. I list it as number 1 because so much of a physician's time, especially early on in the career, especially like when they're training, even med students, is just learning, right? You're seeing things for the first time. You're seeing nuanced cases. And back in the old days, like 3 years ago, you would have to go to PubMed, which has like all the medical literature ever published, and you have to like search your question. You could only search it in a nuanced way. Like you had to frame the question correctly. And you spent a lot of time looking up answers to medical questions that you had. Reading textbooks, which I still do because I do like the feeling of paper, and textbooks are consolidated very nicely. But you would go to the textbook and you would read and you would take notes, and then you would go to the next day on rounds and present what you found. But it took up a lot of time, hour and a half. And again, if you scale this across all medical students, trainees, physicians, that's like millions of hours being spent on just like research. And then came along these medical search platforms that are trained on the published literature out there, the New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA, Lancet, textbooks. And you could ask these medical search platforms any question, any nuanced question, and it will provide you an answer with the sources from which it drew the answer. And you can click those sources. Some of these platforms will give you the paywalled PDF for free. Others, you have to like log in through your institution to verify, whatever. But you're getting these answers to your medical questions within seconds, right? So this is allowing trainees, students, physicians to learn at a much faster rate than prior. Up until now, or up until like, I guess I'll keep saying 3 years ago, the main thing being discussed was like the rate at which literature is published is like exponential, and we can't keep up. But now with like these search platforms, we can keep up, right? Because these search platforms are being updated on the latest literature, and so it's truly helping physicians learn faster and be clinically better.
Some say that AI is democratizing expertise, and in this case, for doctors, as you were just describing, every doctor can become a super doctor because they have all of the literature and medical information at their fingertips. Would you say that expertise is going to be democratized even across specialties, and even between doctors who have 20, 30 years of experience with doctors that have 10 years of experience?
That's a great question. That's actually a really good question. I think this is nuanced. It's all nuanced, but I think this like super specialization and like democratizing that knowledge, like cardiologists treating heart failure, now a primary care provider could, use these medical search platforms and acquire the knowledge needed to like make correct decisions. Um, I think if you're in a densely populated area with like a surplus of physicians, I think physicians will stay in their lane. Like the cardiologists will
Yeah.
stay cardiologists, primary care will stay primary care. If they hear a heart murmur, they'll get an echo of the heart and then refer them to cardiology. But if you're in like a rural area that has a paucity of doctors and there's a scarcity, limited supply, these AI search platforms can really benefit communities, right? Because now the primary care provider at their right next to them they have this agent who's able to search information to and in a resource limited area and take better care of a patient, right? Like if they don't know which tests to order for like a rare like rheumatological disease, they can ask it and at least get the workup going before having to refer this patient to the next closest city, which could be 30, 50 miles away. And that's a huge access barrier. And if you think globally in regards to global health, for nations that are truly resource limited when it comes to medical care, democratizing this specialty type information to just like the community doctor, it will have like tons of benefits for these resource limited places.
Yeah,
That's a great question.
that's a very interesting perspective, Jared. Uh, yeah, I haven't thought about that one, but I think you're absolutely right. In certain
Yeah, and then
situations, also in certain regions or countries or you know parts of the world where there is a gap or a shortage of doctors, a primary care doctor can have a huge impact on a population.
no, for sure.
Uh,
And I think, sorry to add one more thing. Like in these like densely populated areas like New York City, right? There's no like physicians are everywhere, and because in these like cities that are so specialized with medicine, like there's a cardiologist, but there's also a cardiologist that specializes in heart failure, and there's a cardiologist that specializes in like heart attacks, right? And even within cardiology, those two fields they're not like they're not stepping on each other's toes. Um, so it's just interesting that I think willingly they won't want to, have a medical search platform telling them how to treat, a STEMI when the doctor is a heart failure doctor.
from a user perspective, would you say that AI powered search tools are incredibly better than the traditional PubMed or UpToDate, from searching capabilities?
Yeah, I think so too. UpToDate, interesting enough, launched their own like AI platform based off of their repository of data and content. So it's truly robust, but definitely much better than the traditional type in PubMed. I get like PTSD from this question. Like type in your research question, and then you have to search and go to the librarian and ask. Yes, very much more robust, especially when it's providing the primary literature from which it got the information. And typically, what my workflow looks like is when I ask it a question and it presents like a clinical trial that answers my question. I will like print out the clinical trial and just like skim through it and read it. Not only to verify the answer, but because this is probably a trial I should know about and I should be able to cite. Um, so quite
Are,
robust.
are these tools helping physicians improve their critical thinking by uh, asking back questions, are getting even more specific in terms of what they are trying to solve for, or is it more a data download based on everything that it's available?
Another great question. I think it personally, maybe I'm biased. I think it is helping me think more critically. And especially now because like these open evidence, doximity, up to date, like once you ask the question and they provide the answer, underneath the answer, they'll suggest like follow-up questions. Right? So then the follow-up question is a question that I'm like, oh, I actually do want to know more about that. And then so now you go down this path where you're learning, and it's really, really cool. But I'm not sure if we'll talk about this later. When there could be a disadvantage of these AI tools, especially for clinicians early in their career and still training, where the AI tool is basically doing the workup or the assessment and plan for you. So like when a patient comes to the hospital, asking the AI to just create for me the differential, create for me the plan, and you just like take a step back and you're like, all right, I'll let the AI do it. Like I think that could be harmful, and it is a huge disadvantage for learning and critically thinking. I think the physician, when they see a new patient, should always do the problem solving first and think on their own, and then again use the agent as like a support tool to help them make better decisions, not make the decisions for them.
All right. So to wrap up on use case number 1 for medical search, what I'm understanding from you that there are 3 physician tools that you would most recommend, or at least, and those are open evidence, doximity, and up to date. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, those are at least the most popular ones, the most robust ones that have the greatest distribution right now.
All right. Okay. So let's move on. Let's talk about use case number 2, and that's a patient chart summarization. So let's talk a little bit about that. How often do you use that, and what's happening in that world right now?
Yeah, so I don't think this space is like so fleshed out yet, but there's tools you can use that will help you. Interesting enough, Epic is launching or has launched again their own like AI tool that can go into charts and like summarize patient data or whatever. Doximity and Open Evidence are 2 other platforms you just mentioned, where you could also like copy and paste data. They're HIPAA compliant, and they can like help summarize a complex patient. This tool, so I think I should share examples. So in areas where patients are incredibly complex, they have tons of like comorbid conditions, they have end-stage renal disease, they're on dialysis, they have a recent history of a heart attack, they had a stent placed, and they're coming in with bleeding from the stomach, right? So complex. And with these chart summarization tools, you can like copy and paste last notes, last hospitalizations into these HIPAA compliant platforms, give it a prompt like you do with ChatGPT, and it can summarize very succinctly who this patient is, what hospitalizations they've had in the past, what complications they've had, the meds that they take, incidental findings that they've had in the past. And instead of you taking 20, 30 minutes to like click every single note for the past year, this tool will just will just give you the summarization within like 15, 30 seconds. And now you're able to quickly read through it, see like the key findings from the past, what's like the most important thing to focus on for this patient, and you can more comprehensively care for a patient. So there's a limited number of tools right now that are doing this. The incumbents are obviously like or will start doing it more mainstream, but Doximity, Open Evidence can do this right now, and it saves so much time. I truly think it betters patient care now that I can quickly review past hospitalizations, past primary care visits, issues with social history, like do they live alone? Is this patient completely immobile, and do they live on like a 5-story walk up in New York City, right? So truly remarkable features.
wouldn't this be a great use case for a ChatGPT or Claude or any other LLMs? If you have all the patient information and you integrate the core LLM tools that exist today, this is what I use a lot for summarizing and
Yeah.
and structuring information. So this doesn't seem to be like a overly complex exercise or task to do within any potential tool.
Exactly. And
So
if you remember what I said if you remember what I said at the very beginning, it's like the boring problems are the ones that are going to have like the biggest impact.
Yeah, that's right. And it has to do with time, and as you were saying earlier, time for the physician.
Exactly.
All right, so let's talk about use case number 3, and that's note writing and documentation, which is also kind of related to the previous one.
Right. So I think this is the area that's just been in the news nonstop, right? It's the physician, they have like their phone here, they ask the patient, hey, I'm recording our conversation, I have this artificial intelligence scribe who's going to listen to us and then transform what we discuss into a note, right? This was probably like the first main use case of the applications of generative AI in healthcare. Is this like ambient documentation? So, you have Augmetics, Nabla, companies that started like 3 years ago, like once ChatGPT was released.
Which seems to be a growing category, but also a very crowded space. And you have companies like Abridge, you have companies like Suki, Nabla, and others, right? So seems to me a space that it's becoming less differentiated. So what do physicians really like? Or maybe they don't really care and they go for price?
Yeah, you're asking the right questions, right? This space, because it was one of the first spaces to like pop up, and it's like easy to do, right? Again, ChatGPT can do this. It is very saturated. It is a very saturated space, and look anywhere on LinkedIn and they'll say it's like now commoditized, right? The expectation is that your AI tool can listen to my conversation with a patient and create for me a beautiful summary or a note from it. An example, Doximity, right? I think a couple months ago, they launched their Doximity Scribe, which is, they did it just because, I'm not speaking on behalf of them, but they probably did it because they felt like they just had to do it in order to just offer like the most minimal feature for any like AI product. So how do they differentiate? And I think this goes back to what I said at the beginning, is like getting into that revenue cycle management, that like billing area where you'll see like a direct return on investment from using the platform. Again, physicians, as long as you're allowing me to look at the patient when I'm speaking to them, make eye contact, knowing that my conversation will be transcribed and written in a note that sounds like me, I'm fine with it, right? But to differentiate themselves in the market, it's like getting into the billing area, like what is the return on investment? How can I improve the bottom line?
So what, from a physician's perspective, what tools are the most popular that you've seen?
Yeah, I think Abridge, definitely. Abridge was one of the first ones to integrate into Epic. I think they announced a couple months ago that they're getting into like the billing arena. They're integrating with some insurers so that the physician can know if something's covered or not by the insurance. Nabla is also a very robust company. I think they're based out of France, but they have some good market share throughout the U.S. Suki, another one, and all these people. I think they just were one of the first. They were the first movers which is why they've been able to really scale, and they integrate with EHRs, and they gain traction quickly.
Interesting. But then at the same time, my understanding, and I may not have the full picture here, but my understanding is that initially, a bridge in particular, they had a partnership with Epic, which helped with distribution. Later on, Epic became an investor in a bridge. So it looked like that a bridge was gaining quite a lot of ground through becoming a strategic partner with Epic. And my understanding is that recently, well, I don't know if I have the full facts, but my understanding is that Epic sold their shares and decided to do it themselves. So, they were once partners, and now they are competitors. And in that time, Epic was able to learn everything from a bridge in terms of how to innovate in that particular space. So it seems to me that, you need to partner with incumbents, but then at the same time, those partnerships could be risky, because you're opening your books and you're opening your processes, innovations, etc. So what's your point of view? Because on the one hand, these space, it's becoming commoditized, as you shared earlier, and they need these partnerships to get the distribution. But then on the other side of the spectrum, you're partnering with potential competitors. So how do you think about that, these complexities?
Yeah, I mean, this is like drama. It could be made into like a little TV show. Um, it's it's like a good foot in the door, I guess, right? Like a bridge gets their foot in the door with Epic, gets the distribution, and can like at least get the ball rolling and scale quickly from the get-go. And then all of this drama that unfolded after the fact with Epic divesting and then creating their own ambient AI feature. I think they partnered with Microsoft for it too. It's an interesting market move, and it very much replicates like free market like methodologies, which healthcare isn't a free market. It's a quasi free market, but that's a story for another time. But like it's a game theory, and I think it's very interesting. I think Abridge is like the only one who really partnered with Epic, so I don't foresee it having to other companies. But I think it was strategic. It was a good foot in the door play from the get go to get that distribution, which is key for that technology curve in healthcare for adoption. You need that distribution, and that's what they got. And Abridge is still now a household name. I think they're getting into that billing side of things. So
yeah, but from totally agree. But from a product perspective, and I know that you as a physician, you have tried many of these tools. Do you think that companies like Abridge or Suki, they have a differentiated product? Do they have a moat, a strong competitive advantage? Or would you say that most ascribed products have a comparable product, and then their differentiation comes through additional tools or through distribution? Or how do you think about the kind of the whole package?
yeah, I think it's the latter. I think
The latter.
all the scribes, right? They're listening to my conversation. They're creating a note, right? But the differentiation comes from like, what are the additional features or tools, right? Are you able to ensure diagnostic accuracy? If you're in value-based care contracts or risk-based contracts, are you helping ensure that I'm coding for every possible a disease that this patient has, because they're complex and I should be reimbursed from it for it. I was going to say something else. In a prior article, I think I wrote about it in September, on AI and healthcare utilization, and I mentioned that like there's like three three key facets for companies to follow to ensure, they gain like adoption among the market. One of those is like making sure the experience is frictionless, right? Like it's streamlined. Second one is having a distribution moat, right? Like, oh, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, distribution moat,
Yes, I
and
think
then
I read that articles. Yeah.
and then the third is distribution moat, and then like return on investment. And if you hit all three, you can gain great market traction, but it's very difficult, as you can see.
All right, so let's talk about use case number 4 now, and this is something that you have written extensively in your newsletter, and that's discharge summaries and care transitions. So let's talk a little bit about that one.
So I think this feature is rather early. I don't think many people are doing this quite yet. Or physicians and people like me are using like third-party tools like Doximity and Open Evidence to really help with the transitions of care. So if you're not in medicine, if you're not in medicine or like providing care, transitions of care is like going from a hospital and being discharged to home, or going from an ambulatory setting into a hospital. And these transitions of care are incredibly dangerous, because when you're in the hospital, someone's watching you 24/7. If you need something, someone's there. God forbid something happened, someone is there. And then once you get discharged from the hospital, there's no one watching you 24/7. You're on your own. We scheduled follow-up appointments for you. It's up to you to make them. And if you don't make them, you're at increased risk of morbidity and mortality. So what I've been doing is using tools like Open Evidence and Doximity to help me craft the physician-to-physician discharge summary, which is nuanced, it is heavy in medical jargon, and then I transform that into a patient-friendly discharge summary that can be read at like a 6th grade level, so that the patient understands everything that's happened to them during their hospitalization, because I can assure you that a majority of patients don't understand what's going on, right? They're getting antibiotics, they're getting blood drawn, they're doing this and that, and they're just letting it happen because the medical team is making those decisions. So having a patient leave the hospital knowing pretty well like what happened, why it happened, and what the next steps are greatly improves care. And I don't have the date on this yet, but I'm sure it can reduce readmissions and improve time out of the hospital.
That sounds like a super interesting use case.
And again, it's a boring use case.
Yep, with a lot of potential for sure. I think that's a good one for AI. And then the other one, if we move to the last one, like use case number 5, and this is something that I hear a lot about. It's AI for clinical decision support, whether it's for diagnosis or treatment plans or whatever. Are we there yet? Are there good companies or tools that are helping physicians be better at diagnosing and developing better treatment plans? Or are we still in the early innings?
Yeah. So it's interesting because in order to say you're like I'm pretty sure this is true, but in order to say you're a clinical decision support tool, it needs to get like FDA approved. Right, so it needs to go like get approval through the government. So a lot of the tools that are being used now, again, Doximity, Open Evidence, they're not. I don't think they can classify themselves as these clinical decision support tools. Right, they're just like medical search platforms. So the clinical decision support space, has been around for a while. but those with AI integrated into it, or those that were built from the ground up with AI, there's I can't really name them. Glass Health, I think, is marketing themselves as a clinical decision support tool, but it's still young, I think, just because there's like regulatory hurdles. And additionally, going back to my point from earlier, especially for young clinicians, like clinical decision support tools are great to make sure you don't miss anything. But I'm very scared that when these tools start telling you how to think, like telling you what the diagnosis is, or and saying things with confidence, I think that's a little dangerous, and that the physician at the end of the day should always be the one to list out what they think is going on with the patient first, and then using the clinical decision support tool to make sure nothing's missing.
Right. And what about ChatGPT, from OpenAI and Claude and Gemini and these other LLMs? How are physicians using these tools to help them in clinical decision support? And are they? I know that patients and people in general are using it. I know that my wife uses it from time to time, and my son the other day told me, "Hey, please take me a picture with your phone, because I think I have a bruise. I want to ask ChatGPT for a diagnosis." And so that's happening a lot. I would imagine that physicians are also using LLMs to a certain extent. So what's your experience with that?
So I think before, like, Open Evidence, Doximity, UpToDate, before they launched their AI tools, I think a majority of physicians were using Claude, ChatGPT to ask simple or complex medical questions. But at the end of the day, those tools are not HIPAA compliant, and they're not like specialized for medical, like, literature, etc. So I've stayed away from those tools for anything medical related. I only use UpToDate, ChatGPT, or UpToDate, Doximity, Open Evidence, just because I know that they're trained on medical literature. There's a little bit more trust there. UpToDate is like a highly regarded platform that has a tremendous amount of trust among physicians. Doximity is like just a well-known brand in healthcare, and then Open Evidence is a newish company, but they've certainly bought physicians' trust. And it's interesting because, like, sometimes my colleagues and I will see a chest X-ray, and we'll test ChatGPT. We'll take a picture and we'll say, "Tell us what's wrong with this chest X-ray," and it will spit out nonsense. So I don't trust it for that quite yet. But you brought up actually an interesting perspective, right? It's like, for the patient. Should the patients be using it? I think if it can help patients engage better with their chronic conditions, to take better care of themselves, I'm all for it. But using the platform to, like, query medical questions, like, my throat hurts, etc. I have a huge lump on the, like, right here above my clavicle. Like, should I be concerned? Any physician will tell you right away that if you have, like, a lymph node that's swollen right here, that is a huge red flag. But ChatGPT may be like, "Oh, you probably have a little cold. Like, just watch and wait," right? So I wouldn't suggest patients use it for medical queries, but they could use it to just, like, engage better with their health, right? If they have diabetes, that's very common, and I'm sure ChatGPT has a lot of information on the different medications for diabetes, how to manage it, lifestyle modifications, etc.
All right, so Jared, I have 2 more questions for you before we wrap up for today. The first one is, if you think about the different physician tools and AI companies, and we already talked about, Doximity, Open Evidence, UpToDate, even Epic, a large incumbent. There is also this company, Hippocratic AI, which has raised a lot of money at a huge valuation. Some people are saying, I mean, some people say that they are building something meaningful and interesting. Some others are saying that it's a bubble, and I don't know if they have. I think they have, from what I've heard, less than $20 million in revenue, and they are valued at $3.5 billion. But my question to you is like, if you were an investor and you had some money dedicated to investing in healthcare AI companies, what are some of the companies that you are most excited about, and that you see a meaningful product and a meaningful impact on physicians' lives and providers in general? Where would you put that money to work?
Yeah. Again, I'm gonna keep preaching this, but like it's the boring problems. It's the boring problems that I think have the highest potential, and honestly, probably the biggest potential for revenue, because it's the boring problems that we as physicians face over and over and over again. That if you solve them, like that's a very scalable solution, right? Solve all the boring problems that physicians face, even though they're not exciting. It has a lot of revenue potential, in my opinion. Like again, going back to like the diagnostic coding, right? Like just making sure that everything that was mentioned in the visit is coded for. Boring problem, but if you're getting one or two more diagnostic codes per visit, like that's meaningful, and it scales. And I'm not saying this it should be like being what do you call it, like upcoding, but like if it's genuinely valued. Again, it's the boring problems I would invest the most money in. If someone created a way to really streamline the transitions of care process, like writing the discharge summary or helping write the discharge summary, making sure patients have all the follow-ups they need, making sure that they have all the social work stuff they need, like transportation, durable medical equipment. If an AI can just like coordinate that, not take action on it, but coordinate it, that is huge for patient care. If it can reduce 30-day readmissions, that's revenue saving for hospitals. And again, it all scales. Boring problem, highly meaningful.
And company specific, which two or three companies would you invest if you were a fund manager or a healthcare investor?
Which companies would I invest in? Okay, well, Doximity is a public company, so you could buy shares of stock there.
But
Open
you
evidence.
could, yeah.
Yeah. So
it could be private or public. I mean, if someone came to you and say, hey, here's, I don't know, 10, 50, $100 million, and you're gonna be an investor, like where would you put that money?
So Doximity, I think would be great. Open evidence, even though they're competitors, right? You could diversify your portfolio a little bit among the competitors, and then honestly, and I shouldn't say this, but I like United Healthcare, right, is another incumbent that is using AI tools, for better or for worse. I still think that they just implemented a tool to solve a very boring problem, which is like telling the physician if something's covered for a service during the visit, which is huge when it comes to prior authorization, because that's a huge headache.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Boring problem, big problem. Which I've talked. I think I recently wrote about prior authorization, but these are huge companies that they're probably already in your index fund, so maybe no need to invest in them individually.
That's great. All right. Okay, so last question: if you had to make three non-obvious predictions about AI agents in clinical medicine over the next year or two, what would you say? What would you predict?
Okay, I think that AI tools that are addressing the patient side of things, like patient engagement, will really start taking off. I already know some, like just like allowing the patient to better engage with their own health. I just think there could be so much traction for that, and it would be consumer facing. So I think it would be easy to gain investment and revenue there. Again, thinking about boring problems, it's just anything that can help with chart summarization and presenting patient data to you in a cleaner, more succinct way than having the physician go through a chart manually one by one. And then lastly, I think we still have like a decade more, but it's having like the actual co-pilot that I defined from the beginning, right? It's having your little co-pilot AI person who's helping you make decisions, and they're in it with you, right? They're equally responsible.
That's awesome. Jared, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you being here today in the podcast. Thank you for sharing your experience. I wish you all the best. And you are doing incredible work with your newsletter. Please check it out. And to everyone else who is watching and listening, thank you. And until the next time. Thank you
for having me.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.